Kevin. Quiet weekend in sports.
Hey, Kevin.
Good morning, guys. My head's still spinning.
Good Lord. All the things that went on this weekend. Just kind of recap that Iron Bowl. It looked like Alabama was a deer in headlights in the game. I don't know why. Crowd noise, pressure of the moment, one team loose, one team tight. What did you see there, Kevin?
It was the most un-Alabama-like performance we've seen from them in a long, long time. I can't recall the last time, if ever, we saw Alabama lose its poise repeatedly the way it did in that game. Whether it was, the bad snaps, the forced rushed snaps on back-to-back plays, whether it was go back to early in the game, Jalen Hurts, and this play was relatively non-important or unimportant in that game, but Jalen Hurts was rolling to the right, couldn't find anybody open, and instead of he was on the sideline. Instead of throwing the ball over the sideline, he just stepped out of bounds with no one about to tackle him.
Yeah,
he seemed out of sorts from the start, and part of it is, give credit to the Auburn team, the Auburn defense, the Auburn offense, the Auburn crowd, which in the Georgia game and in that game was as loud and intense as I've ever heard it, and I've seen a lot of games there, so. It was a perfect storm, and Alabama just wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah, when the committee comes out tomorrow, where will Alabama land, Kevin?
I don't think they're going to be too far out of the mix. I think you can probably see them at number 5.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there are not 4 football teams in America better than Alabama. No, they don't have the marquee win on their resume, although let's be honest, the Florida State win is better than the Florida State team is right now. That was a different Florida State team. And they had some issues that beyond the quarterback, because they fell apart in different ways throughout the season. And maybe Jimbo Fisher was having one eye on Texas A&M, who may have been part of their problem. I don't know, but that's what people are reporting, that he's headed there. So, but that's a quality win. And they have one loss to a team that is playing better than anyone in college football the last month in a very hostile environment. So to say that Ohio, where this is headed, guys. This is headed towards, I think, Ohio State beating Wisconsin, and then it comes down to, do you pick a 2-loss Ohio State team or a 1-loss Alabama team? To me, that's no contest. And if they pick Ohio State over Alabama, it will be a complete travesty. But I think that's where we're headed for a decision for the committee.
Yeah, for that ask, should Nick Saban get his spin out there this week? Usually they got a game, so he lets the play do the talking, they win, so it's a no-brainer. And I think he started that a little bit at the press conference after the game, saying, hey, one game, this team won 11, it's deserving, but I don't know all the different scenarios. Should he get his voice out there heard this week, Kevin?
I don't know that makes any difference. And let's be honest, though, even in the post game, that wasn't a very passionate case that he made for his team. He said the words, but he seemed a little dispirited at the fact that they didn't lose by a miracle play. They didn't lose by an unprecedented ending. They got whipped on both sides of the ball for the better part of 60 minutes. And I think I think that took a little bit of the spirit out of him, which is understandable after losing such a big game. I don't know if he goes public and makes the rounds on sports talk radio and on ESPN and makes a really strong case for his team. He doesn't really have to do that. The problem is, and you guys know this, committees are not all created equal. We may have talked about this before. There are louder voices than others in that room. And one of the loudest in that room is Barry Alvarez. And other people on that committee, this has been reported by people who are close to the committee, they tend to lean towards him. They tend to listen to him. Then you have the Ohio State athletic directors on that committee also. Now, I know they have to leave the room when their teams or their conferences are discussed, but come on. They're in that room with those people every week for the last month. So that human nature, that makes a difference. So I think the Big Ten has a real advantage here in that committee room.
I didn't realize that, Dab.
Well, I just think I think Kevin is right. I'm glad somebody else said it besides myself. Florida State was played as they were, and as they were was a good football team.
Yeah.
Coach Bryant played teams that that he signed 5 to 7 years to play them. And when he got to them, they were either really good than they were when he signed the contract, or really bad, which you can't help. They sign them a lot quicker now, but you have to give the Florida State win as they were. And they were, at that particular time, a good football team. They didn't, because of the quarterback. I know the defense didn't play that well. I don't want us to make coaching the problem with people is that they decide whether they like or dislike a person, especially coaches, by watching them on television, or by watching them in person, or by trying to decide, what they are, what kind of people they are, without knowing them. It drives me crazy. That's the way they've always been. So at Tennessee now, we've got a guy who was up with Sandusky. I don't know what he did or what he didn't do. Not to the point that I could make a decision as what was right or wrong. I would trust my athletic director to try to make that. Obviously, he's made one where he feels like he's going to lose the support, what little support they have, and the money. Are we going through a time now that fans decide who the coach is going to be?
Well, that's a scary situation in Knoxville. You've basically just given in to mob rule, led by clowns like Clay Travis, who tweeted out the cell phone number of the athletic director at Tennessee and was whipping people on social media into a frenzy yesterday against Greg Schiano. And let's be honest, and several people have written this. Pat Forty wrote very strongly about it on Yahoo this morning. And I tend to trust people like there's a columnist in New Jersey, Steve Politi, who's been there a long time, who covered Greg Schiano during his entire career at Rutgers, who knows him a lot better than, I guarantee you, anybody in Knoxville, and far better than people like Clay Travis. And he said, for people to, first of all, what they're really upset about is they don't think he's good enough. They don't think he can compete with Alabama. They don't think he can compete with Kirby Smart and now Dan Mullen at Florida. And that's what they're really upset about. Don't hide behind this fake concern that you believe on very, very thin, a very thin thread. One suggestion in the deposition that he might have witnessed something, one of those horrible things that Jerry Sandusky did, and not done anything about it. He's denied that. The coach he supposedly told it to, this was secondhand information or thirdhand information that came out of a deposition up there. Never proven. It was never followed by legal authorities, by the law. So to use that as an excuse to basically destroy this man's character and destroy his career. What does Ohio State do now? He's the defensive coordinator at Ohio State. I'm sure they did their due diligence before they hired him for that position, because by then Penn State had already come and gone as far as the legal issues there and the whole Sandusky scandal. So look, if he was involved in any way, if he saw something and did nothing, then he should never work again in college athletics. But we are a long, long way from that being proven. And again, for Tennessee fans to use that as an excuse because they really don't think he's good enough, because they all thought they were going to get John Gruden, which was a joke from the start, is to me is unconscionable. And I would seriously think about firing that Tennessee athletic director if he doesn't have more backbone than that.
Would you hire Lane Kiffin?
I'll tell you what, if I were a coach, I wouldn't go near Knoxville. I wouldn't go near that job. I wouldn't go near that athletic director. I wouldn't go near that environment. If they are that weak in their leadership that they're going to bow to mob rule, I wouldn't want that job. Now, Lane Kiffin, being Lane Kiffin and being different, probably would take it. They would be lucky to get Lane Kiffin. They don't deserve Lane Kiffin. How about that?
Wow.
I'll say that.
Yeah,
Tennessee doesn't deserve Lane Kiffin.
But what do they do there, though? Did he not, John Curry, did they not, because evidently there was agreement signed on both sides. So I'm Greg Schiano now. I'm going for money. You're going to give me money, first of all, because you didn't stand with me. What happens there with that situation? Is he owed money in a situation like that? I know he has his attorneys. There was an agreement signed there. And then what should the AD have done? Should he read that better and not gotten that out there? If they hired the guy, you're right. If he would have started winning, they would have come back. But they probably weren't going to sell season tickets there. Where does Tennessee even go now, Kevin?
Well, first of all, on the legal question, and I think it may have been a Knoxville television station that reported that they may be on the hook for a great deal of money because they supposedly, and I don't know that this is a fact, but supposedly he did sign a memorandum of understanding. That's how these things work. You know, the contract is 30, 40 pages long. It gets worked out over a period of 6 months or so. But you sign a memo of understanding when you come to an agreement. It has the basic parameters of the contract. And if he signed that, I think Tennessee is going to be on the hook because, again, not only are they not giving him the job, his reputation now has been attacked. His reputation has been shredded by, again, this social media mob in Knoxville. And I keep going back, led by people like Clay Travis. And the fact that anyone would listen to Clay Travis about anything is beyond me, but that's another subject for another day. So you've got that issue. You're already going to pay Butch Jones not to coach. Now you're probably going to have to pay Greg Schiano not to coach. Now you got to hire somebody to come in and pay him to coach. So I don't know where they go, but this is a massive miscalculation by John Currie. And guys, at some point, somebody in college athletics has to start holding administrators accountable for these ridiculous deals they keep giving coaches. And I say more power to the coaches if you can get it. But when you're Kevin Sumlin and you have a $10 million buyout that's payable not in monthly installments over the remaining length of the contract, which is the standard procedure, but in either 6 months or a year from now, he gets that entire amount.
I thought I saw 60 days. They had to pay it in 60 days.
There may be 60 days. It's it's a relatively short period of time. Tommy Tuberville had a similar deal at Auburn. They had to pay him within a year the $5.1 million they owed him to go away. Whoever's making these deals and letting agents hold them hostage, they need to start holding administrators' feet to the fire. This is the most fiscally unsound business in America and the most mismanaged business in America is major college athletics.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about Gus Malzahn, win, lose, or draw Saturday as far for him personally? Will he go to Arkansas or will he stay at home?
I think he's staying now. I think there was a little something there, perhaps. I think there was no question about Arkansas's interest. And, you know, you have to go back and put this in context. Before the Georgia game, there were certainly many, many, many Auburn fans who would have paid for a moving truck to come to Gus Malzahn's house and move him to Fayetteville. Then they dominate Georgia. They control Alabama. They control their destiny. They are in the SEC championship game. They win that. They're in the playoff. And you know how fickle fans are. And if they lose to Georgia this week, there will be Auburn fans ready to back a truck up to his house and tell him to, you know, good riddance and have fun in Fayetteville. If Gus Malzahn is smart, and again, you don't know exactly what is important to a coach.
Contract length.
Is it a chance to win championships? Is it working for people that won't meddle or tell you what to do? And that's been a problem at Auburn with Jay Jacobs, but Jay Jacobs is on his way out. So who's going to be the new athletic director at Auburn? Is it a Pat Dye guy that's going to be looking over Gus's shoulder the way Jay Jacobs did, the way Pat Dye has done? Or is it going to be a break from that crowd? He does have allies on the board of trustees at Auburn, I mean. So I think at the end of the day, I think he ends up staying because let's be honest, you have a much better chance to win at Auburn than you do at Arkansas, unless the situation is just untenable, and it doesn't seem that way to me. I mean, certainly there have been issues, and again, the Jay Jacobs thing was a problem. It was a real problem for Gus, but he's on his way out. So I think at the end of the day, he stays, but nothing. Hey, after yesterday, nothing will surprise me for the rest of my life in college athletics.
Yeah. Kevin, I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but to me, the playing surfaces for the players, the fans should stay in the stands. I think Auburn did a bad job there. I guess a riot has to break out for those Auburn fans to come on the field like that. Hey, I get it. You beat Alabama. Everybody wants Bama. I understand you're excited, but they should have had that place surrounded. But you start getting up in these players' faces with the emotion in that game, everything you played for, everything you worked for. I mean, it's set up for a humongous fight to break out. What has to happen for Auburn to get really serious about keeping these fans off the field in that situation?
Barry, I am with you 1,000%. If you are a fan, you have no business being anywhere near contact with the players after an emotional game. I don't care if it's the Iron Bowl. I don't care if it's a non-conference game in September. You have no business out there because it is a recipe for disaster. I've been in places. I've been in Knoxville when they beat Auburn. This goes way back. Auburn was number 1 in the country. Bo Jackson was a senior. Tennessee beat Auburn. They went and got one goalpost. Then they went and got the other goalpost. I saw someone get hit in the head with an upright as it came down. And no, they didn't tear the goalpost down. But when you put players in proximity to fans, in the heat of the moment, it is a bad idea. And if these schools, and this is not just Auburn, but certainly it applies to Auburn, you can keep fans off the field if you want to. I covered the 1996 World Series in Yankee Stadium. In Game 6, they beat the Atlanta Braves. They lost the first 2 games in Yankee Stadium, then swept the Braves the next 4. At about the 8th or 9th inning, mounted policemen on horses surrounded the field in foul territory. They were not going to let those fans on the field. If you want to keep them out, you can keep them out. They didn't care to keep them out. They let them get on that field. The security was a joke. And I don't know what the SEC has to do, increase the fines much more significantly than they already have. And even that, with the money these schools make, that's a joke. $250,000 is nothing for them to stroke a check to pay that SEC fine that they were hit with after Saturday night. But I don't know. Does someone have to die? Does someone have to get seriously injured or paralyzed in the mob scene down there? And again, most of those kids aren't there. They're not looking for trouble, but it is trouble waiting to happen, and something's got to be done about it before someone gets seriously hurt.
Yeah, you're right. The money's nothing. When the SEC sending these checks for 20, 30 million, they just take 250 out of theirs and send it to them. We'll get it. We'll get it to some charity.
Let me say one thing about basketball. I think certainly the loss hurt Alabama. It didn't help Alabama to lose, but I think nationally it calls attention to the kind of team they have this year. So I think it's a plus rather than a minus. And the other factor I want to watch sometime is that don't ever, they got on my butt all the time about don't ever think that Mike Krzyzewski doesn't get out on the court in close games. Texas had them beat. And I didn't see the finals of the Florida game. They're 17. They always get 17 and 20 down and come back and win. Don't ever think that Mike doesn't get out there and pull the punches that he pulls in the basketball games, maybe in a quieter way than I did. I'm not comparing the two really, but that needs to be at least brought out that he doesn't sit there with his not saying anything. He's behind the scenes busting every official he can bust.
Hey, I watched a good bit of that Texas game when they came back. I don't know what the free throw disparity was, but it was pretty large in Duke's favor. It usually is in Duke's favor. Oh, yeah. And look, and also, why do people want to have from the start have hammered John Calipari about this one and done business, about bringing in these McDonald's All-Americans who will stay for 1 year and then turn pro? Nobody is working that system better than Mike Krzyzewski.
No. Nobody
is working that system better than Mike Krzyzewski, and he gets a pass. No one attacks him. No one says, well, hey, wait a minute. Are they supposed to be student athletes? How can they be student athletes when they're there for one semester, basically, and then they're turning pro? Hey, this is the sainted Mike Krzyzewski and the saintly Duke University program. They're doing the exact same thing. They're just doing it better because they're getting better players than anybody. They've got more talent on that roster. That front line, they keep bringing in 6'10", 6'11" guys who can jump out of the gym and who will be playing in the NBA. And it's almost comical that the amount of talent they have on that roster. And as far as Krzyzewski working the officials, maybe college basketball needs to do what college football said they were going to do this year. And if you go out on the court to argue a call, maybe you get a technical.
Yeah. 5-on-3.
Not going to happen, of course.
No. All right, Kevin, anything special coming up with AL.com? I guess Alabama will be quiet this week. Anything else special coming up with the Auburn game and over in Atlanta?
Yeah, well, obviously we'll have heavy coverage of the Auburn-Georgia rematch, coaching situation. What's South Alabama going to do? Is Chip Lindsey, the Auburn offensive coordinator, he's been mentioned for that job? Is that serious? What is going to happen? What else is going to happen in the SEC? Any more dominoes are going to fall if Jimbo Fisher leaves Florida State for Texas A&M? We've got our eyes on all of that stuff. What's going to happen with Bruce Pearl at Auburn? We haven't even mentioned him. It's gotten kind of quiet down there. On that front, I don't know if they've kissed and made up. I don't think they have, at least as far as I'm aware of, but at least it's gotten quiet there. So, as usual, there's way too much going on and not enough time to handle it all, but we'll do our best.
Thanks, Kevin. Great stuff.
Thanks, Kevin. Good job. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.